Hi everyone, welcome to RCM product training day 5 and 6. On the agenda for today we have more than one template, minimum posting days, template name, supported languages, how fields are defined, different field types, filter fields, pick list, operators, recruiting groups, and also the J-role permissions, permission blocks, write permissions, the button permissions, listing fields, mobile fields, application status set, and the interview permissions. So first of all, the job requisition template. Just a couple of notes. You can configure multiple job requisition XML templates with different fields, permissions, and operators to suit different business needs. Also, store a backup version of a template before making any updates to the existing template in the system. You can't delete requisition templates after they've been created, but they can be disabled. Changes made to the job requisition template apply retroactively to the existing job requisitions. Job requisition elements. So the type. Set the type to the job rec. Spell check on a form level doesn't function in the recruiting product. Minimum posting days. You can set this attribute to 0 or a positive number. If set, the system doesn't accept postings of less than the X number of days and doesn't allow users to remove the posting manually until the X number of days have passed. The min internal lead days. You can set this attribute to 0 or a positive number. If set, the requisition must be posted for X number of days internally before external posting is allowed. That can be seen in the screenshot below here. Moving on to the next slide, we're going to discuss the template name versus template description. So what is the template name? The unique ID of an XML template and the name that appears for the requisition in the user's interface that is set in the default language of the instance. If the template name changes, uploading the template and provisioning creates a new requisition template. There's no way to change the template name once the requisition form has been created. If you have to change the template name, you have to disable the old requisition form, and a new requisition form must go through the whole process of setup again. If the instance has multiple language packs enabled, then the template name can be localized. The base template name does not support special characters such as the umlaut. Using special characters in the base template name results in the system issues. The template description. A template description element is used to provide descriptive text. Supported languages. Requisitions can be configured to post in multiple languages. The requisition XML must contain a declaration of allowable language packs. You should declare at least one language element. Only language packs that are enabled in both provisioning company settings and admin center recruiting languages should be set up supported language in the requisition XML. The supported languages populate the post jobs in languages field on the job requisition details page. We're now going to move on to the field definition and attributes. The field definition syntax is the same as the candidate profile XML template, which we covered in training day 3. We see the same attributes, the ID, the type, required, and custom. Remember, the ID must be unique within the job requisition XML template. We'll also see the default label, the translation label, and then the field descriptions. Field labels. The field label element usually controls the appearance of the field name on the user interface. However, this label element does not control all field labels on the user interface. On certain fields, the succession data model controls the field label, or on other fields, there are settings in provisioning admin center that control the label used in the system. The label element is not conditional. This means it is not possible for one field to display one label to the hiring manager and a different label to the recruiters. An example of where some of the labels can be configured in the admin center is under the job requisition system field labels. This is also accessible through the provisioning system. Standard versus custom fields. Similar to the candidate profile, the job requisition also has a predetermined list of standard fields and their corresponding field type. The list of job requisition standard fields can be found in the implementation guide. If a field is defined as custom equals true, the customer can customize the field ID and choose the field type. Field types. The type attribute defines the type of data that the system accepts in the field that carries the type attribute. Note, do not change the field type of a field. This can cause application errors on existing records sorting data that does not match the new field type. It can also cause issues in reporting. A full list and description of the job requisition field types can be found in the implementation guide. For example, text, text area, date, pick list, number, operator team, and competencies. The job requisition field types can be seen in the implementation guide and are also available below in the screenshot. Required elements. required. The required attribute defines whether a field is required for completion of a requisition record. The field requirement is only enforced if the users editing the requisition can have write permissions to the field during the edit. Note, you can't make the fields conditional required on the requisition record. You can't hide, display, or require fields based on the answer to an earlier field. Group name attribute. The group name attribute is the attribute and is supported only on the fields that are type operator or type operator team. The group name attribute enables you to define a recruiter's groups for the set of users. An operator and operator team field types consider preventing recruiting users to select from any active recruiting user. By specifying a group name attribute, you limit the available users in the field to only the users defined in the recruiting group. MIM type attribute. The MIM type determines whether or not the system renders HTML tags defined in the C data content. The two supported MIM types are as follows: text plain and text HTML. Text plain is for unformatted plain text, and text HTML is for HTML formatted text, as you can see in the screenshots. Filter fields. Filter fields are standard types of pick lists and have a naming convention of filter 1 to 15. Filter fields can be made searchable on the candidate-facing career sites. Configuring labels and pick lists associated with provision internal and external applicant search settings, status settings, and not in the XML template. Supports cascading parent-child pick lists up to 6 levels. This is also applicable to M fields as well. The filter field XML definition and the internal and external applicant search settings. This field can be defined similar to below. Note, the pick list ID is not provided in the XML template. Instead, the labels, pick list, and grid order are configured in a provisioning under the internal and external applicant search settings and can also be configured in the admin center or under internal and external candidate search settings. We're now going to move into the pick lists. So, what is a pick list? A pick list is a drop-down that allows you to restrict the values that can be selected for a field. You can define cascading pick lists that have a parent-child relationship so that the pick list values in one drop-down change based on the value selected in another drop-down. Pick lists are configured in Admin Center, in Pick List Center, or Pick List Management. Pick List Management is the legacy system. The pick list ID specifies to which pick list the field is associated to. The parent pick list ID, if the field is a cascading child field, this setting specifies to which parent pick list the field is associated to. Next we're going to discuss the operators. So, recruiting operators define the relationship of a user to a job requisition or job application. There is a set of predefined recruiting operators that define roles such as the recruiter, the sourcer, the coordinator, or manager. Recruiting operators used in configuration templates to determine what people in each role can see and do. Operators, special field type that can only be defined on a particular predefined list of field IDs. The predetermined list of operators fields is supported, and each operator field has a related designator. Custom operators cannot be created or not supported in the system. So an example of the operators are the originator, which would have the designator O, hiring manager, which would have the designator G, the recruiter name, which has a designator R, the coordinator name, designator T, source name, which is designated to the role S, second recruiter name, which is W, the VP of staffing, which is Q, and then each one of these designator has a dependent operator team. So for example, the recruiter name, the dependent operator team would be the recruiter team. Next, we have what are called relational operators. In addition to the operator fields, you can set up permissions and routings to users who have a defined relationship to the operator user. Most operator designators, such as OR, can be appended with the relationship designator M to indicate a relationship operator. So the example we have here is RM, which would be the recruiter's manager, while RMM is the recruiter's manager's manager. This would be the same, for example, the hiring manager, which would be GM, while GMM would be the hiring manager's manager. Operator definitions in the XML definition. Operators need to be defined in the job requisition XML template. Please note the use of group name, which we covered earlier, is in the slide deck. Operator team. Operator team's special field type that can be defined only on a particular defined list of field IDs. A field of this type on a job requisition enables the auto-populate feature for recruiting operators. Recruiting teams are groups of people in the same role. They're used in association with operators and operators teams and take on the permissions as the corresponding operator. For example, the hiring manager teams have the same permissions as an individual hiring manager. They are called operator teams in the configuration template. So to define within the XML template, the fields can be defined as follows. As you can see in the example, the field definition ID is the recruiter team, the type is operator team, and then the group name is recruiters do not change. The recruiting team must also be associated with the job requisition template in Admin Center Manage Recruiting Team settings. Next, we're going to discuss the J-role permissions. 3 permission blocks for the J-recruiting operator automatically added to all requisition XML templates upon upload into provisioning. The J-recruiting operator is used to ensure that the report schema have appropriate permissions to the field. J-role controls which fields appear in the legacy recruiting reporting links. If the J-role is missing, provisioning automatically adds all fields into the J-role. J-role permissions can be ignored and will be visible on all job requisition XML templates. The permissions for the J-role cannot be removed. So next we'll discuss the field permissions. Field permissions determine which field a recruiting user sees in a specific recruiting state. Field permissions are read and applied top to bottom in order they appear in the XML template, meaning the later permissions override the former if there is conflict. The field permissions element contains various attributes such as type, description, role name, status, field element, and RFID. The field permissions continues, so the type attribute of the field permissions element determines what kind of permissions are applied in the permission block. Only 2 types, read and write. There is no none or hide type. To remove a field from view, omit it from any permission block. The description element is most useful as a brief description of what the field permission block is intended to do. Role name. The role name element defines which operators are impacted by the permission block. Multiple role elements are supported within each permission block. Status. Field can be permissioned conditionally based on the requisition system statuses. There are only 3 possible values, which are pre-approved, approved, and closed. The field ref ID, specifically all field IDs that the permission block should impact. Example, title. So this is an example of a permission block. The role O, which is the originator, has write access to the below fields when the requisition is in a pre-approved system status. So as you can see in pre-approved, the originator has access to write permissions for title, external title, originator name, hiring manager name, recruiter team, job posting language, and quick apply. The role OR has write access to the field assessment when the requisition is in a pre-approved and closed system status. So that means they can make an edit to that field. Button permissions. The button permissions element defines who can access and use these buttons in user interface. It's only possible to permission the close and reopen requisition buttons. The close button natively only appears in the requisition state of the approved, and the reopen buttons only appear in the requisition state of closed. So there is no status element supported in button permissions. Listing fields. In order for the customer to be able to reference a field in the job requisition as a token in the job description, headers and footers, the field must be configured in the listing fields of the job requisition template. The token name will be the field ID of the reference field. Mobile fields. For an approver to review and approve a requisition through the mobile application, you must define the fields available in the mobile view in the job requisition XML. The mobile fields element defines the fields that show on the mobile screen during the requisition approval. Application status set pipeline. So, the application status config element defines the applicant status set for the job requisition created from this XML template. The applicant status set manages the steps through which applicants are routed through during the hiring process and manages the interaction between the statuses and the feature permissions. The name of the application status set must be specific in the XML. For example, as you see below, the application status set name equals the standard status set. We'll cover the application status configuration in more detail as part of the application training. Feature permissions. Feature permissions define operator access to certain special functionalities. Operators can be granted access to features such as the offer approval and the offer letter conditionally based on the applicant's status. Here's some examples of the feature permission types. We have candidate questions, late stage application, interview assessment, offer approval, offer letter, assessment integration, historical question answers, historical assessment results, historical background check results, and onboarding. The application template name element defines which application XML template is displayed in the candidates and recruiting users when managing the applications on a job requisition created from the job requisition XML template. After the job requisition XML is created, the application template should not be changed or may cause errors on the existing and new records. I'll now show you how to get the XML template from provisioning, and we'll review the XML template. Once you've gone into provisioning, you'll select your company ID and scroll down to Manage Recruiting. Once you're under Manage Recruiting, you'll go to Import Export Job Requisition Template. Here you'll see a list of all your job requisitions, including the active and non-active job requisition templates. To identify which ones are active and which are not active, you can see here under active, the ones that have the check mark are active, and these ones that don't have a check mark are inactive. To download the job requisition template, simply just select the export option and click on it. This will start the download for you, and you'll see that the download will appear in your download. Select it to open it. When opening the XML template, it is recommended to use Notepad++ as the easy way to read the template itself. So starting from the top, as we've seen here earlier on in the training, you have the job requisition template. Its type of job rec, spell check equals false, and then the minimum posting days is 0 and minimum internal lead days is 0. Here you'll see the template name. This template name should never be changed, as by changing it, you'll create a brand new requisition upon uploading the template. We can provide, however, update the translations. So, for example, you can see here template name language equals ES_ES. This is to signify that in Spanish, the job requisition template will be Spanish job requisition. Next, you'll see the supported languages, which is in this block here, which define which languages are supported on the job requisition. So, for example, we have English US, French, German, Spanish, and Brazilian Portuguese. Next, we can see that the fields defined in the system. So, for example, the first field that we have in our job requisition template is ID, which is the field label rec ID, and you can also see the translation takes place here for the different languages, and the description that we have for this field is requisition number. Again, the translations take place for the description. Moving on, we can see that fields such as title, external title, and evergreen, quick apply, so forth and so on, are also defined in the system. As you can see here, we have a field called status, which is the type pick list. So as discussed earlier, the field label as well as status. You can see the translation is for status, and then the field description is for reporting purposes only. As we can see, as discussed, the pick list IDs are here defined within the system, and what this does is it references the pick list ID in pick list center. So going on, we can see that we have a number of different fields configured all in the same way, except for the different types that are defined. Scrolling down, we're going to look for the filter field. So in order to find a field in the template, simply select Control F on your keyboard, and a box should appear. So all we do is we type in the filter, and then use Find All in Current Document, and what we'll see is a list will appear here. So when we double click on it, we can see that this has brought us to the filter field. Again, filter 1 is a type pick list, and then we've set this to required equals true, which means that in the job requisition, when the recruiter or the operator has to fill in this field before approving the requisition. For filter fields, the system will not take the label as defined in the XML template. Instead, it will take the label defined in the internal and external applicant search settings. So in order to get to this, we go back into provisioning, and in provisioning, we can see that we have a system here called internal and external applicant search settings. Once you select, it will bring you into this screen where we can define the pick list IDs and the field labels for the M fields and M fields. Here you have to do it for both external site and then the internal site. So the field that we were looking at in the template is filter 1. As you can see here, here's the filter 1 field ID. This is the field label, and then the pick list ID associated to this field label is country. We now go back into the XML template to have a look at the difference between the custom fields and the non-custom fields, the standard fields. So Using this same example, filter 1, we can see that this is defined as customs equal false. If we scroll down, we can see that we have the following field called state, which is set for pick list, required equals false, and custom equals true. This means that this field is a custom field that's been created for the user, created for the job requisition. This field also demonstrates the parent-child relationship between the filter field and the state field. As you can see here, the pick list ID equals parent field ID equals filter 1, which means that the parent field for state is filter 1, and then the pick list ID for this field is state. Please note when using the custom fields, not to define the field ID equal to a standard field, as this can cause issues in the system. We will now have a look at the operators. So scrolling down again, use our Control F, and we'll search for the recruiter name. Using find all, we see that this is how the field is defined. So again, the field definition ID equals recruiter name, the type equals operator, required equals false, custom equals false, and the group name recruiter do not change name. This just defines which people will be found when searching for recruiters. Only the people within this group will be assigned as a recruiter on a requisition. If we scroll down, we'll see that this is a number of fields that are assigned to the recruiter which are derived from the system. For example, recruiter phone and recruiter email. We can also see this is the operator team, which is recruiter team, type operator team, required false, custom equals false, and then the group name is also the same as the recruiter name, which is supported. We'll now have a look at the permission blocks. So scrolling down the requisition, we'll find the permission block shortly. Here we can see that the start of the permission roles. Again, field permission type equals read. This identifies that the person reviewing the requisition, the operator here, J, will only have the read permissions. As stated in the training, the J operator is automatically populated in the requisition once uploaded in provisioning. As you can see, the first three sets here are all approved, pre-approved, approved, and closed. Once we go past the J permissions, then we'll see that we have the OR permissions, which is for the recruiter. Again, what we're doing here is the field permissions type equals right, which means that the recruiter will have permission to edit the fields assessment and custom attachment in any of the following statuses of the job requisition: pre-approved, approved, and closed. Scrolling down, we can see that the different operators have different read permissions and write permissions. Again, another example here is the originator. In the pre-approved status, they only have read permissions to these fields, whereas in this permission block, you give write permissions to the originator in the pre-approved status. Scrolling down, we keep continuing, we can see that we have a new status which is approved. So what we're telling the system with this permission block is that in the approved status, give the originator read permissions to the following fields. These fields, this can be done for all different operators, and it's recommended to have them blocked together in order. So again, you have close is after the approved, and again the originator has read permissions for these fields. Next, you'll see that we are going to the next operator role, which is the G. Now, with the permissions, we're going to have the relationship here between the G, GM plus, and GMM. GM plus signifies the hiring manager's manager. Again, read permissions in the pre-approved status of the following fields. Then you have write permissions in pre-approved status for the hiring manager, and the hiring manager. This will be the same for the different operator roles in the system. We'll now look at the button permissions. These are defined slightly different to the normal fields in the system. For button fields, you don't have to define which status they are in. It's based on the requisition itself. So the button permissions, you can see here, this is your button ID. So what you're doing is you're telling the system that for the button close rec, these operators will have permission to close a job requisition. Another one here is that these operators have the option to link child requisitions to an evergreen requisition. And then you have button permissions here for the reopen job requisition. Again, these operators have permissions to reopen a job requisition at any status once it's been closed. Next, we have the listing fields. So as said earlier in the training, these are what identify which tokens will appear in the headers and footers and the job description. Scrolling down, you can see all these different fields that will become tokens. The field ID, they're mobile fields. Here is defined, as said in the training, that mobile fields are what fields are available to the recruiter or operator when they're trying to approve a requisition using a mobile device through the app. Next, we'll see the applicant status set. So here we're setting the applicant status configuration to be equal to the standard status set. This is what controls the pipeline for the users and controls which fields the candidate will see in the different statuses of the applicant status set. If multi-stage is enabled, you'll also have to permission for the different operator roles here and what fields they can see in the applicant status. So for example, you can see here the hiring manager and the originator have permission to edit these fields and these statuses under the status set. Scrolling down, you can see the different field permission types, which is, for example, read and write, for the different statuses and for which operators they have access to in the applicant status. So we just finished the read permissions, and next we're on the write permissions. So in the write permissions, what you're doing is you're telling the recruiter and these different roles that they can edit these fields within these statuses on the applicant status set. Next, we'll have a quick look at the feature permissions. So as you can see here, defined here are the feature permissions for the candidate questions, and this is for the candidate. So the candidate has access to answer these questions within the default status. Interview assessment is another feature permission, where in interview 1, these users can initiate the interview assessment. So example, organize an interview for a candidate. The next feature permission we have is late stage application, which means that the recruiter can initiate a late stage application and invite a candidate to apply in the default status and the forwarded status. This is just a continuation to see that the different operators have different permissions in the different statuses, which are here, and then the different feature permissions. If you keep scrolling down, you'll see that the different feature permissions for the different users and the different statuses of the requisition. Then at the end of the job requisition template, what we'll see is the application template name, which equals this is a next-gen candidate detail info template. This is the name of the application template in the system that you want to associate with this job requisition. That is the end of today's training. Thank you.